Google Analytics was based on page views and click-throughs, and the world, all of the competitive tools went a different route and said, look, it's about events. And when somebody asks for a page, that's an event. When they scroll on a page, that's an event. When they fill out a form, that's an event. Like this field and that field and that field are different events. GA4 came out and said, what events do you want? Go ahead and build them yourself. So instead of saying, this is what a landing page is, this is what a bounce rate is, this is what a conversion is, this is what, so it's up to you, which meant people had to go, wait, you were spoon feeding me before, and now I have to think.
Right.
And a lot of people said, well, if I have to do a complete re-implementation, I should look at other tools.
You are listening to Power Marketing with Kevin Lee. Kevin and his agency Did It have helped thousands of businesses win through superior marketing, as have his books, articles, speaking engagements, and the eMarketing Association Power Marketing podcasts. Here's Kevin.
Super excited to chat with Jim Sterne again today. Jim wears a bunch of hats as well, but there's sort of his day job, and he also has the Marketing Analytics Summit, which he routinely runs as a conference. So, Jim, for those folks who aren't keeping up with what you do during the day and Marketing Analytics Summit, how do you break down your day? How do you decide what to do every morning?
It is seasonal. So the season right now is promoting the Marketing Analytics Summit coming up in the middle of June in Phoenix, Arizona, where we'll have 2 days of conference, 2 days of workshops about digital analytics, about attribution, about conversion optimization, about big data, about generative AI and how that's changing analytics. So that's okay. Let me climb off that soapbox. And then the rest of the time, private consultant and mentor. I run a mentorship program called Analytics Cohorts. I do workshops for companies on how do you bring generative AI into the company and how do you run an analytics team.
Well, the intersection of AI and analytics is particularly interesting because the first generation of the LLMs weren't nearly as mathematical as the latest generation. They're getting a lot better at math and at analytics. They're not a replacement for a GUI. They're not a replacement for analytics, but they're getting a little bit better with imputing results from larger data sets. So I'm curious if that's ended up being part of the agenda for your upcoming conference,
Yeah,
is sort of that intersection.
There's two pieces to this. One is, can I get it to do something for me? So can it write code? Sure. Do I have to check the code thoroughly? Yes, of course. Does it run? Can it write SQL? Yes. Does it do it well? Now it requires a little bit of training. And that's also your personal or your corporate style. Can it generate a report? Can it kick out an email? Can it summarize a meeting? These are generative things that are valuable and save time, and I can automate stuff. But it's not the exciting part of generative AI, which is the creative part. So if I'm asking it, you use the word impute. We're used to having computers be memory and calculation. So remember this and sort and search and be deterministic. This is not that. This takes statistical analysis and predictive analysis and moves it into language where it hallucinates, which if you use it the right way is a good thing. So do I ask it, here's my Google Analytics data. How many people came to my website on Wednesday and clicked on that button and downloaded that PDF? Wrong. Here is my Google Analytics data. What in there is interesting? What would my CFO want to know about? What kind of business questions could I be asking of this database schema? What if we extended the time frame? What if we looked at it in reverse? Can you give me an analogy with another industry that's not mine? And does that bring anything to light? Treat it as an intuitive rather than a calculator. And suddenly you're in a whole new realm of, we didn't know we could use computers to do this. But for analysis, it's terrific. It is the way that a good analyst treats the business person. Business person says, I need this number. And the good analyst says, interesting. Yeah, I'd be happy to give you that number. Tell me more about what you're going to do with that, because I got a bunch of other stuff that might be useful.
Right.
So this AI can turn into an advisor
Hmm.
and prompt you rather than you spending all your time prompting it.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see where that goes. When how were the last 4 years from a conference perspective? Obviously, you probably had to sort of almost reboot your conference, not quite from the ground up, because you obviously had all former attendees and you'd sort of been there and done that.
We had
Is
we
it the
had 20
same?
years worth of experience, and suddenly we're all online. And the first year we were online, it was pretty good because overhead was zero.
Right.
But the experience was not great. And the next year we did it, it was even less great. And I just came to really not like doing virtual events.
Hmm.
The thing that I really missed about going to a conference is the side conversations, the
Yeah,
standing
sure.
in line for lunch, the lobby bar, the chance to talk to your peers.
Hmm.
So I have recreated that online with analytics cohorts, which is small group discussion. It's just 5 people, 90 minutes, twice a month for 6 months to talk about analytics and running a team and having a horrible boss and looking for a new job. And my mother-in-law is coming to live with us. I mean, just it's whatever, but it's very Chatham House rule, right? You can talk about what we talked about, but you can't say who or what company.
Right.
So the conversation is very real.
Hmm.
And right now recruiting for cohort number 14. So it's been going very well. But the conference side of things has picked up. Last year we had more people come than did in 2019.
Hmm.
So we've kind of recovered. And now we're seeing an influx of sponsors finally who said, yes, yeah, we really do want to be in person. It's important to press the flesh and hang out with the other vendors.
Right.
So we're feeling strong that not only that, but so in COVID, people didn't want to travel. And then companies said, oh, look, we don't have to spend money on travel. Isn't that great? Now I think they're coming out of that learning, you know what? Real value, real education, professional networking is really valuable to the quality of our team. It's good for recruiting. It is a treat to get people out of the office and let their minds expand. Um, and now that we're taking it out of Las Vegas, I think we're getting a lot of good feedback of people thanking us for that.
Right. Yeah, that was going to ask you about your venue choice, and because I had remembered it being in Vegas for quite some time. And so how did you end up with Phoenix? Like, was that you know, pricing driven, location and airport driven? Were there any particular factors that were key?
The key factors are the three things are travel, so really good airport.
Right.
It is a secondary market, so it's not ridiculously expensive like New York and San Francisco and Chicago and Vegas. Vegas got expensive, like
Hmm.
really wild. And the weather's nice.
Right. Great, great. So it sounds like from the way your recovery went, it was sort of the attendees happened first, and then the sponsors woke up and said, wow, there's a bunch of qualified people in this location. I guess I
Well,
should be there.
actually, truth be told, the vendors came rushing back looking for an audience, and the audience wasn't there yet.
Ah,
So
okay.
the sponsors pulled back, the audience started growing, and now the sponsors are going, okay, well, we'll give it another try.
I see. All right. Well, so it is always a catch 22 in the events category, right? In that, you can't get the sponsors till you have the audience, and the audience wants critical mass as well because they want to be able to network with each other and learn from each other.
And
Right.
if you don't have sponsors, you can't have food.
Right. One thing I've noticed, and I don't know, in your instance for sort of the rebooted version of your conference, if folks are doing tables, if folks are doing booths, I find that, a lot of times exhibitors don't want to carry a lot of stuff with them, right? And so that that happens, that impacts the premium and incentive side of things, right? And it also impacts the, do I want to bring a lot of printed brochureware, which is probably slightly out of date whenever I get there. So I've noticed that both the sort of pop-up booths and everything else has started to see the QR codes on them, which were resuscitated by the pandemic because you couldn't eat in a restaurant
Absolutely.
if you didn't
And
know how to
and
use the
now I'm
QR.
going into restaurants and there's no menu. You have to bring your phone with you.
Yeah,
I saw a lawn sign in my neighbor's yard for supporting our local teachers with a big QR code, sign the petition. Oh, okay. Boom, boom, boom. Sign the petition. You're welcome. I mean, they have come back and they are we used to think they were just so ugly. And why would I need that to go to a website? And now they're part of the infrastructure. They're
yeah.
very useful and they're so easy to create.
Yeah. Although a lot of folks make some really interesting one-on-one level mistakes in their QR codes because they don't necessarily understand the mechanics behind them. I mean, I invented this Inceptor technology, which puts custom QR codes on every piece of direct mail, but we have to think about what you're encoding, right? Because QR codes are encoding a URL, right? The
Mhm.
longer the URL, the more dense the QR code is, right?
Right.
And of course, if an analytics person is involved in the creation of the QR code, they're like, oh, I want my UTM parameters and I want the source and I want this and I want that. And the same thing if they're going to do outdoor advertising, they're like, oh, I can traffic the campaign so that Grand Central Station gets a different QR code than Penn Station. That way I'll know which of my locations are working, but they don't realize that you have to shorten it, right? Because if you put that full string into the URL, it's going to be too hard for the phone to get a grip on
It's
it.
just a little black box.
Yeah, but you need to like wait for your phone to decode it. Whereas if you use a shortening platform, you can basically take what has a full, rich, set of URL parameters in the landing page, but you
Right.
sort of hide it behind some shortening technology. So we had to build that into Inceptor because we certainly don't want direct mail that's hard to scan, right? We want direct mail that's easy to scan or outdoor advertising that's easy to scan. And I noticed that even Super Bowl advertisers were doing it wrong. Like if you're going to
Yes.
spend millions of dollars on a spot, like the 101 level QR code best practice is we'll make sure that it scans pretty easily into the phone. You can have all the UTMs you want on the landing page, but you don't need to put them into the QR. You can hide them behind a shortener.
Having a lot of money to spend does not necessarily mean you're doing it smart.
And I'm sure you find that actually in the attendees to your conferences and folks you consult with is that, some of these folks sort of succeed in spite of themselves, right? And they somehow manage to muddle along and it's that they make a lot of 101 level mistakes. And you look at them and you're like, wow, if only they just did the 101 level stuff would move them pretty far forward if they just did the 101 level stuff.
I've been having a conversation about QR codes on attendee badges because they're for the vendors. So you
Right.
go up to the booth and they just boop, now they've got your data.
Right.
And I'm saying, wait a minute, I want Kevin's contact information. Put two codes, one for the vendor and one that takes you to LinkedIn so I can connect with you on LinkedIn.
Right.
And then I go a step further, which is good old-fashioned business cards. Now, I want to say this out loud to see if I'm just getting old. But a QR code on a business card means I can find you on LinkedIn. That's great. But it's also a physical reminder that we met and I wrote a note on it and there's a thing. If I just walk around and talk to 100 people and I go boop, 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 and I go and I connect with all of them on LinkedIn and I get home, it's like, who did I meet? I don't know. But if I have a stack of business cards on my desk, oh, I was going to send him that email. Oh, I need to talk to her about that project. But the QR code, the individualized QR code is just a really solid idea
Yeah.
because I don't know about you, but I remember junk mail being the bane of my existence. In fact, when my family moved out of the home I grew up in, the people who moved in, they changed the street number on the house. As long as it was between the ones on either side, you can have whatever number you want.
Right.
And I said, why did you do that? It's like, because we didn't want all your junk mail. We suddenly were on nobody's list, right?
Right.
Well, now, and then internet came along. And so the amount of mail that comes in is just dwindling to nothing, which means people look at every piece. And if I get a piece of mail that is personalized with a QR code, I know that I'm going to find something that's of value to me as a user.
Yeah.
And then, of course, as a marketing person, I got your number.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing, I always look at everything from a friction reduction perspective, and I'm
Ah,
sure you do as well, right? And not every but one of our direct mail clients also implements the portion of the technology where it pre-fills out the landing page because it's a little creepy, to be honest, right? Like your
yeah.
name and address is already filled out on the landing page. Wait, then they have to think back, like, how did that happen? How did the plumbing
Mm,
know, right, that this was me? And of course, there's also the sort of false, pre-fill if like a spouse or somebody else at the same household or someone else in the same business passes the postcard or the mail to another person who's influential in the decision. So it's not always the right thing to do, but if you always think about it from a friction reduction perspective, you can make an intelligent decision about whether you want to remove that friction or not.
I'm absolutely agree with you for business to consumer. But I'll make an argument, and I'm saying this out loud to see how I feel about it.
Right.
In a B2B environment, there's a postcard and it says, "Hey Kevin." So of course I know your name, I have your address.
Right.
"Hey Kevin, there's a special offer for you, QR code." And then I'm happy that, or not happy, but I don't get wigged out that
Yeah.
it's prepared for me.
Yeah.
What I do get annoyed at is when it is a LinkedIn video that pretends to be a personalized video because it's got a picture of my website behind them. And the recording doesn't say anything about my name or special offer. It's just, oh, come on.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. We also had, use the QR codes when we do Giving Forward's Good Picks, which was this thing I inadvertently invented that does charity headshots at events. And I
Right.
invented it because I had no booth, and we got a booth donated by affiliate somebody's to us. And we're like, what am I going to do? All right, I'll bring in a professional photographer. I'll do headshots. We added the QR code. And in that case, obviously, it's not personalized to the individual, but it was, easy to remove the friction because the person's individualized phone can autofill, right? And so rather than me hand them a tablet and have them put their information in, it's actually easier for them to do it on their own device because like they would start to fill out their email address and it would know which of their 3 email addresses they wanted, and it
Right.
would fill in the remainder, and they just had to tap it a couple of times and it would be filled out. So, I think it's really interesting to see how friction reduction manifests itself in
Mhm.
different ways, right? Depending on the device, depending on the use case scenario. Um, and within direct mail, the other fun thing that you mentioned B2B and direct mail. So one other thing we started testing for our B2B clients was appending on the executives' home addresses to the mailing.
Hmm.
Because now that they're only in the office 3 days a week, the
Right.
chances are that your mail might arrive there on one of their off days, which means it's in a pile. And if it's in a pile, it's not going to get the level of attention it deserves, right? So we might as well mail it simultaneously or staggered to their home address as well, because we're trying to reach the individual. They may not be in a business mindset or frame of mind when they get it at home, but when the value of the prospect is high enough, sending the extra piece makes sense, right? Because now
Yeah.
you're hitting them twice.
Yeah.
Maybe different creative. The jury's out on whether you want to run different creative or not. Still trying to figure that one out.
Well, now that technology is racing ahead of us and we can sort of do whatever we want, whatever your budget allows.
Right? Yeah, of course. Yeah, and it's amazing how stuff that's like old comes back within the direct mail community. One of the other things that I noticed came back is dimensional mail, which is
Oh,
basically
right.
like origami type direct mail, right? And I haven't seen it come out on a personalized basis yet. It's still, engineered by like paper engineers who figure out
Right.
how to make a pop-up book,
Yeah.
that a person gets with mail in it. But it has a much higher level of engagement, right?
Well, anything that is, scratch offs and peelers. I mean, anything that makes you do something, open this
Right.
and then watch it go. And yeah, all
Yeah.
of that stuff is fun. There's a new greeting card that keeps being advertised to me online that is got butterflies in it. It's a box that you open up and
Right.
these paper butterflies that are rubber band wound, and they all fly out of the box. It's like,
Right.
I want to send those to some prospect. Just although I have to tell you, my very favorite way that somebody got me was back in the day. They sent me a fax, and the fax said, "Jim, please call me, David," and a phone number.
Right.
And I couldn't, what the heck is this? And I picked the phone and said, "What is this?" And he said, "Well, I send out direct mail and I make phone calls and I knock on doors, but man, nothing gets a response like a really weird fax. Everybody calls me."
Yeah. And
Okay,
then they
great.
pass.
What are you selling?
Yeah.
I'm selling fax services. Of course you are.
Yeah, I mean it's also really interesting to do the math on things that are sort of outside the ordinary in direct mail, right? So you have we have the origami example or the butterfly example or the I spoke to a guy yesterday who's in a startup mode to do 24 cases of water
Hmm.
where he shares the case of water with six different advertisers and they've got QR codes on them, right? And I
Huh.
started to think about it because he was trying to walk me through the math. And I said, well, costs about $1 to send a regular envelope, right? I mean, by the time you
Right.
do the printing and everything, and maybe
Yeah.
postcards, you're going to be in the 30 to 50 cent range, depending on if it's four color both sides and bleed, and all sorts of different variables, which which type of paper you use. And I thought, like, okay, so the water's free, the bottle has a cost, right, to it. The delivery is probably the biggest cost. So,
The weight.
oh yeah, because of the all in. But I'm thinking, well, all in that, maybe you're like in the $1.50 per bottle range, right?
Okay.
Which isn't that different. Now, would I drink a bottle of water that just showed up on my doorstep? No. I
Thank
mean, the
you,
thing is,
no.
you need to vet it, right? But it
Yeah.
was just fascinating when you start to think, like, if you start to take it to the next extreme, like, would that work? What's the level of engagement of a bottle of water or a butterfly filled box or all these different things? And does it really break through the clutter sufficiently more to justify the extra
And
cost?
then the top end for the really high value prospect is the beautifully wrapped box with air tag in it. And when the box is opened, inside is a cell phone. And when you open the box, it rings. And you go, "What? Who is this?" "Hi, we're trying to reach you about your automobile warranty."
Yeah. It's all about the value of the prospect and how close
Yeah.
they are to a decision at that point in time. So you mentioned the landing page with sort of the faked LinkedIn background, right? Where it's sort of not quite hyper personalized and doesn't pass the smell test necessarily. But one of the things which we hadn't decided whether to do yet was to take the charity headshots, which we do at events, where now increasingly it's not that it's sponsoring, it's more and more other people sponsoring it.
Mm.
For example, this will be probably about the time that this publishes. We'll be at the Prosper Show in Vegas for Amazon FBA. And so one of the things we can do, obviously, when we take a professional headshot of you is we can do fun things with it, right? So we can have Midjourney create a pirate, and then we can glue your face on the pirate, right? Now that Midjourney has an API, it's actually not that complicated to do that. Now, it still needs to be curated by a human because it doesn't always come out well, right? So you might take you 3 tries to get it to work. But I'm guessing that if I send you an email and it's got you as a marketing pirate, probably going to break through the clutter. It might get a chuckle, it might get a head scratch, right?
I will certainly open the envelope or peel open the card, or yes, I will look at it and go, "Wait a minute, what is this?"
Right. Yeah. So when we think about the next generation of hyper personalization, there are all sorts of potential rabbit holes that marketers could go down. And then the
Absolutely.
question becomes, should they? Right. And
Audience and offer specific.
yeah,
If I am selling Donald Trump golden sneakers, then they're going to be thrilled to get something unique and special, and oh, I'm part of the tribe. If I'm selling chewing gum, probably a waste of time.
right. Absolutely. So for the agenda, back to your upcoming conference, for the agenda, are there any particular speakers that you're looking forward to hearing what they have to say? Have you already locked in the agenda, or is it still?
Oh yeah, the agenda is set. We're doing a number of workshops. Some of them are technical, some of them are business. How using GA4 and
Mhm.
building good dashboards. And I will be talking about generative AI and using it for analytics. We have a number of speakers talking about the tools that you can use, the generative AI tools that'll help you with analytics, and people talking about how you can help you with your storytelling, how you can help it with your creative. So I'm interested to hear what the guy from Coca-Cola has to say about using generative AI to crank out creative and measuring the results. I went to a conference. I was invited to a conference in 1994 by a guy who said, I am a king of direct mail and I don't know anything about the internet. And I want you to come and give an hour-long presentation, and I want you to stay for 5 days because we're going to have 1,000 people there, and I want you to be on hand because I don't know. And I want you to teach me, and I'm going to be in the audience with all of my attendees. And I just took that on board as, you know what? What do I want to know about analytics? What are the basics? What do people have to learn? But gee, that's interesting. I just keep hearing people having trouble connecting up GA4 with BigQuery. Well, surely that's solvable. Somebody's done it. Just come tell us. Just
Mhm.
show us how. And then some of it is how do you actually manage data literacy in your company so that you're not overwhelmed with ad hoc questions? And how do I build a team? And how do I regain trust? This is a big one for analysts. How do I explain to everybody on the business side this is not accounting? It's
Not
statistics.
census level data, yeah.
We it's directional, it's suggestive, it implies, it's not, oh, just give me the numbers. We don't have numbers. We have probabilities. And
Mhm.
that's a challenge. So data literacy and now generative AI literacy is is a big deal. But the other thing that I'm really focused on is the value of being in the same place with people. So I'm cutting out a bunch of keynotes in order to replace them with activities,
Hmm.
group activities, where people will get together and build their professional network by trying to accomplish a task together and make it fun.
Right. So you mentioned GA4, which I probably should have brought up earlier, because that's been a thorn in the side of many teams, many analytics teams, for a variety of reasons, some of which it's just that their management got used to certain reporting that said certain things, even though those things might not have been true.
Yep.
Everyone got used to it, right? And now under GA4, it looks different, it smells different, it reports things slightly differently. There's a lot more sampled data in there. So it's further and further from a census, but it still can be useful directionally.
Right.
You know, um, I get the sense that a lot of the changes that were made were really just to keep Europe happy with GDPR, and sort of then they had to change the entire code base because they didn't want like a US version of analytics and then a Europe version. They just said, all right, well, we'll just sort of solve for this lowest common denominator here.
That
Um,
that is part of it. But the bigger part of it was uh, Google Analytics was based on page views and click-throughs, and the world, all of the competitive tools went a different route and said, look, it's about events. And when somebody asks for a page, that's an event. When they scroll on a page, that's an event. When they fill out a form, that's an event. Like this field and that field and that field are different events. GA4 came out and said, what events do you want? Go ahead and build them yourself. So instead of saying, this is what a landing page is, this is what a bounce rate is, this is what a conversion is, this is what, so it's up to you, which meant people had to go, wait, you were spoon feeding me before, and now I have to think.
right.
And a lot of people said, well, if I have to do a complete re-implementation, I should look at other tools. Adobe Analytics is the big competitor in big companies. For everybody else, the one that's kind of standing up a lot is Piwik Pro, which very intentionally made their user interface look like Google Universal, So it's familiar.
Yeah.
And it is, they don't, their business model is selling software rather than selling advertising. So when you get numbers from Facebook and you get numbers from Google, guess what? It benefits them to make you think you're doing really well, so you pay them more money. But then we're watching, companies like Telium step forward and Amplitude step forward and go, wait a minute, we've always been doing this. We've been doing this for a decade or more,
Mhm.
and we've got really solid tools. And if you're going to have to re-implement, come check us out. And it's giving Google Analytics a run for their money.
Yeah, yeah, and under my incubator, which I don't have the logo back there, but various ventures, we're working on essentially sort of an add-on analytics stack that brings back some of the stuff that people still wanted from GA, back when it was Universal Analytics, that they lost, and plugs right in and uses all the UTMs and
Yeah.
sort of is somewhat plug and play. We anticipate probably about a month we'll start rolling it out for users to bang on it a little bit. But we were exasperated, so exasperated that we said, all right, none of the other stuff that was out there really sort of solves all of the needs that we see. So maybe we'll, these days when an AI is going to do, be almost like a pair coder for you and
Mhm.
accelerate the speed of your code, you can accomplish a whole lot more as a sort of SaaS startup than
Yeah,
you ever could
absolutely.
before. That's sort of one of the interesting byproducts of the AI revolution. So, well, I hope to be able to make it out for the Market Analytics Summit, and it sounds like you've got things locked in and really have taken advantage of the desire for people to network and learn from each other in a variety of ways, not just as the speaker and the audience, but a more dynamic, interactive.
And we're also, co-located with Conversion Conference and the Email Analytics Conference and the Machine Learning Week Data Science Conference. So what happens, what's really interesting is the exhibit hall. It's really interesting. It's just full of a very interesting variety of vendors. So that's always entertaining, and the mixture of the kinds of people who show up.
Great. Well, thanks so much for joining me on this conversation about a variety of topics. I look forward to having you on again.
Always a pleasure. I look forward to it. Thanks.
Kevin Lee's Power Marketing is available on all your favorite podcast networks. Kevin loves helping businesses excel at marketing. Having marketing challenges? Just like Santa in The Miracle on 34th Street, if Kevin can't help you, he'll know someone who can. Find him on LinkedIn, subscribe, or follow.